Right now, in approximately 73% of American households, there are canned foods sitting on a shelf. Some of those cans are doing quiet, consistent work, delivering real nutrition, extending shelf life, and filling gaps in your diet that fresh food simply can't cover. But some of those other cans, they're not doing what the label implies. Some are loaded with sugar levels that rival desserts. Some contain chemical linings with ongoing health debates. Some have sodium counts that push past a full day's recommended limit in a single serving. And the frustrating part? They're sitting right next to the good ones. Same aisle, same shelf height, almost identical packaging. But what if you could walk through that aisle with a completely different set of eyes? That's exactly what this video gives you. We're going through 11 canned foods genuinely worth buying, not because they're convenient, but because the science and the nutritional data back them up. And then we're flipping the list and going through 11 you should put straight back on the shelf, with the specific reasons most videos don't bother telling you. And one of the worst offenders on that avoid list is probably sitting in your cabinet right now. Let's start with the ones worth buying. And we're starting with a vegetable most people grab out of obligation, completely unaware of what's actually inside. Number 11. Beets. The blood pressure can nobody talks about. Most people toss these into the cart because someone once told them they're healthy. They sit there looking a little uninspiring, and most of us never stop to think about why they deserve a spot on the shelf. But that deep red color is telling you something important. It comes from compounds called betalains, pigments that have been studied specifically for their role in supporting nitric oxide production in the body. And nitric oxide is what helps your blood vessels relax and widen. That matters for blood pressure. Research on dietary nitrates, the kind concentrated in beets, shows that regular intake can reduce systolic blood pressure by 4 to 5 millimeters of mercury on average. That's a meaningful number when you're talking about cardiovascular health over time. Here's what makes the canned version specifically worth buying. Betalains are heat stable. That means the canning process doesn't destroy the compounds that make beets valuable in the first place. You're also getting folate, potassium, and manganese, the minerals that support electrolyte balance and cellular function. And the liquid in the can, that deep red brine, is not waste. Pour it into a smoothie. Blend it into a sauce. It carries the same betalain content as the beets themselves. Cost-wise, canned beets are dramatically cheaper than fresh, and they don't spoil in a week. One can delivers a fully cooked vegetable with stable nutrition and zero prep time. If you're building a serious pantry, this is an easy yes. Number 10. Green chilies. The flavor multiplier. You've cooked a full meal. You sit down, take your first bite, and something's off. Not too salty, not too bland exactly, just flat. Like the food is missing a layer. That's where this tiny, inexpensive can earns its place. Green chilies bring a mild heat and a smoky depth that can transform basic pantry food into something that actually tastes finished. From a nutritional standpoint, they're not a headline act, but they contribute more than people realize. They carry a solid amount of vitamin C, and here's something worth knowing. The vitamin C in green chilies survives canning better than in most vegetables. That's because the lower pH environment in the can, the mild acidity, actually helps protect the vitamin C from oxidation during the heating process. So while some canned vegetables lose a significant portion of their water-soluble vitamins in processing, green chilies hold on to more of theirs. The capsaicin compounds, even in the mild amounts found here, have been studied for metabolic and immune support. Nothing dramatic, but useful background nutrition you're getting while primarily solving a flavor problem. Practically, one can under $1 stretches across 4 to 6 meals. Eggs, rice, soups, stews, canned chicken. It upgrades all of them without adding sugar-heavy sauces or excessive sodium condiments. That kind of pantry leverage is hard to beat. Number 9. Coconut milk. The meal transformer. Some pantry items aren't about volume. They're about what they unlock. One can of coconut milk can turn plain rice, a can of chickpeas, and whatever vegetables you have into something rich and genuinely satisfying, without dairy, without a long ingredient list, and without refrigeration until you open it. Nutritionally, it provides potassium, magnesium, and iron, plus lauric acid, a medium-chain fatty acid studied for immune-supporting properties. The body converts MCTs from coconut milk into energy relatively quickly compared to long-chain fats from animal sources. That's why it fits vegan, paleo, dairy-free, and even certain ketogenic approaches. But here's where label literacy matters, and most videos skip this. Full fat and light coconut milk are not interchangeable. Full fat contains approximately 550 calories and 57 grams of fat per cup, much of it saturated. That's a cooking ingredient, not a beverage. Light coconut milk runs roughly 150 to 180 calories per cup and works better for daily use in sauces and soups where you want creaminess without the full calorie load. If you're watching saturated fat intake, excess consumption can raise LDL cholesterol, so use it as an ingredient, not a drink. One more thing, BPA-free carton versions are now widely available and worth seeking out. They give you the same product with fewer concerns about can lining chemical migration over long storage periods. Number 8. Pure canned pumpkin. Not pie mix, the year-round superfood. That bright orange color should immediately signal that this isn't just a November baking ingredient. It's one of the most nutrient-dense foods in the entire canned aisle, and most people only think about it twice a year. A single cup of 100% pure pumpkin, and make sure the label says pure not pie mix, delivers over 200% of your daily vitamin A requirement through beta-carotene. That supports immune defense, vision, and skin repair, 3 areas that most shelf-stable foods barely touch. You're also getting approximately 7 grams of fiber per cup, which aids digestion and helps moderate blood sugar response after a meal. And then there's the iron content, supporting oxygen transport and sustained energy levels. Here's the part that surprises most people. The canning process for pumpkin uses pressure heat, and that heat actually increases the bioavailability of beta-carotene. In other words, your body absorbs more of the vitamin A precursor from canned pumpkin than from an equivalent serving of raw pumpkin. The canned version wins, nutritionally, in this specific measurable way. At approximately 49 calories per half cup with that nutrient density, the calorie-to-nutrient ratio is among the best in the aisle. Now, before we get to protein, I want to ask you something. Do you know what the hardest macronutrient is to store long-term without refrigeration? The answer is coming up next, and the can that solves it might already be on your shelf. Number 7. Chickpeas. The protein problem solver. Protein is the hardest macronutrient to store without refrigeration. Meat needs a freezer. Eggs have limited shelf life. Nuts work but are calorie-dense. That's exactly why chickpeas deserve a permanent spot on your canned shelf. 1 cup delivers roughly 12 grams of protein, plus fiber, iron, and folate, nutritionally nearly identical to what you'd get from home-cooked dried beans, without the 8-hour soak and simmer cycle. They're fully cooked. You open, rinse, and they're ready in about 30 seconds. But here's the angle that most people miss entirely. The liquid in the can, called aquafaba, is not waste. Professional kitchens use it as a direct substitute for egg whites in baking and cooking. 3 tablespoons of aquafaba equals approximately 1 egg white in most recipes. That means your canned chickpeas give you a plant protein and a baking ingredient in one can, with 0 waste. Texture varies between brands. Firmer chickpeas hold their shape in salads. Softer ones blend better into hummus. Sodium can be high, but rinsing addresses most of that. After that, you've got a ready-to-eat protein that flexes across salads, stews, dips, or quick dinners without any meaningful prep. Number 6. Plain canned beans. The everyday workhorse. Nothing's thawed. Dinner is 10 minutes away. You're not ordering out and you're not making pasta again. This is the can you reach for. You open it, rinse it, and it's done. Warm it or don't. Toss it into a salad, stir it into soup, mash it for a quick spread. Nutritionally, plain canned beans hold up remarkably well against home-cooked dried beans. Fiber, plant protein, iron, folate, potassium, all present in meaningful amounts. The sodium is the one legitimate concern, and here's the specific number. Studies published in the Journal of Food Science have shown that rinsing canned beans under water for about 30 seconds. If you buy no salt-added versions, you eliminate even that step. Label check matters here. Skip anything with added sugar, corn syrup, or heavy preservatives in the ingredients. Plain beans, water, beans, salt. That's the ingredient list you want. At roughly 89 cents to $1.29 per can for 3 to 4 servings of plant protein, the cost per nutrition value is difficult to match anywhere else in the grocery store. And here's something I'll come back to in just a few minutes, because one of the biggest avoid items on this list looks almost identical to what we just described. Same aisle. Very different label. Stay with me. Number 5. Sardines and low-mercury fish. The shelf-life seafood king. Stored correctly, these sit in your pantry for years. Not months, years. That kind of shelf life is genuinely rare for high-quality animal protein, and it makes sardines one of the most strategically valuable cans you can stock. A 100-gram serving delivers over 24 grams of protein. Iron, magnesium, potassium, and zinc all appear in meaningful amounts. But the real advantage is the fat profile. Sardines are rich in EPA and DHA omega-3 fatty acids, the long-chain forms your body uses directly for heart function, triglyceride management, and brain health. You don't need to convert them the way you do with plant-based omega-3 sources. Because sardines are small fish, they accumulate very little mercury over their short lifespan. The comparison is striking. Sardines average approximately 0.13 parts per million of mercury. Albacore tuna averages around 0.35 parts per million, roughly 27 times higher. That gap matters when you're eating seafood regularly. The soft bones in sardines are fully edible and provide calcium and vitamin D in amounts that actually register nutritionally. And here's one more thing. If your sardines are packed in olive oil, don't drain it all away. That oil picks up omega-3s and polyphenols from the fish during storage. Use it as a dressing base or drizzle. Number 4. Canned tomatoes. Where the can beats fresh. Fresh tomatoes get all the attention. They get the premium placement at the farmer's market, the recipe features, the food photography. But when it comes to one specific and measurable nutritional metric, the canned version wins. Clearly. Lycopene, the antioxidant compound in tomatoes linked to cardiovascular protection and reduced cancer risk, becomes significantly more bioavailable when tomatoes are heated. Canned tomatoes undergo heat processing, which breaks down cell walls and releases lycopene into a form your body can absorb more efficiently. Research from Harvard School of Public Health and multiple subsequent studies indicates that cooked or canned tomatoes can deliver 2 to 3 times more bioavailable lycopene than an equivalent weight of raw tomatoes. High lycopene intake has been associated in observational studies with a reduced risk of certain cancers, including a 26% lower prostate cancer risk in one notable cohort, though these are correlational findings, not causal proof. From a pantry standpoint, no spoilage. No forgotten produce drawer. No tomatoes going soft 3 days after you bought them for a sauce you didn't make. When buying, look for no salt added varieties to manage sodium. Check labels for added sugars, which sometimes appear in cheaper brands. And where possible, Tetra Pak carton options or BPA-free lined cans are worth seeking out for long-term storage. Number 3. Jarred artichoke hearts. The prep-free nutrition win. Preparing fresh artichokes from scratch is a 45-minute project that most people start with enthusiasm. Trimming the outer leaves, removing the choke, steaming until tender, it's genuinely labor-intensive for a vegetable. The jar solves that entirely. You get all the edible parts already cooked, ready to use. Nutritionally, the value holds up well through the jarring process. Solid fiber for digestion, potassium for fluid balance, antioxidants supporting cell health. But here's the compound that most discussions about artichokes miss entirely: cynarin. Cynarin is a phytonutrient found specifically in artichokes that stimulates bile production in the liver. More bile means better fat digestion and improved elimination of waste products through the digestive tract. It's one reason artichokes have been used in traditional medicine and modern supplement formulations for liver support. This compound is largely preserved in jarred versions, particularly those packed in olive oil, because fat-soluble compounds extract into and are protected by the oil. Oil-packed artichoke hearts tend to have better texture and more complex flavor. Water-packed versions work well if you're watching calorie intake. Just rinse to manage sodium. Fresh artichokes cost $2 to $4 each when in season. A jar of artichoke hearts runs $3 to $5 for 6 to 8 servings. The math isn't close. Number 2. Corn. The vision-protecting vegetable in your pantry. This is one of the most reach-for-it-without-thinking cans in any pantry, and most people have no idea why it actually earns that instinct. It's not just filler. It's not just color and texture for rice and soup. There's specific nutritional science behind why corn belongs on this list. Corn contains lutein and zeaxanthin, 2 carotenoids studied extensively for their role in protecting macular health as eyes age. Regular intake is associated with a reduced risk of age-related macular degeneration, one of the leading causes of vision loss in adults over 50. 1 cup of canned corn provides approximately 8 to 10% of meaningful daily intake for eye protective carotenoids. Here's the part most people don't know, and it changes how you should eat it. Lutein and zeaxanthin are fat-soluble carotenoids. Unlike water-soluble vitamins, they require fat present in the same meal to be absorbed efficiently. Adding half a teaspoon of olive oil to your canned corn, or eating it alongside any fat-containing food, can meaningfully increase the amount your body actually uses. The corn is doing the work, the fat unlocks it. Thiamine, magnesium, potassium, and vitamin C round out the nutritional profile. The heat used in canning, as with tomatoes, increases the bioavailability of these carotenoids rather than decreasing it. Number 1. Mixed vegetables. The nutritional insurance policy. Opening a can and seeing carrots, peas, corn, and green beans together may not feel exciting. It's not the kind of can that gets featured in food photography or recipe blogs. But from a pantry strategy standpoint, it's one of the most efficient buys you can make. Think of it this way. A single can of mixed vegetables contributes meaningfully to 4, 5, sometimes 6 different micronutrient targets simultaneously. Vitamin A from the carrots, vitamin C from the peas and corn, fiber from across the board, B vitamins, potassium, iron, all present in a single opening. It functions as a nutritional insurance policy for days when fresh produce isn't available. Meals feel monotonous. Fat-soluble vitamins A, E, and K remain stable through the canning process. Water-soluble vitamins like B and C do drop somewhat, but the overall nutrient density per dollar is still strong. These vegetables are packed at peak ripens, which means their mineral and fiber content is locked in at optimal levels. No salt-added versions are available from most major brands and worth seeking out. The flavor difference is minimal and the sodium difference is significant. So that's the buy list. 11 cans that earn their shelf space with real nutritional data behind them. Now I'm going to flip this completely, because the next part of this video is where most people get surprised. Not by the obvious junk food, but by the cans that are actively marketed as healthy, convenient, or smart choices. And a few of them might genuinely be in your pantry right now. Number 11. Canned cheese products and processed cheese spread. The can that's barely dairy. If you've ever squeezed cheese from a can, here's something worth knowing about what you were actually eating. Under FDA definitions, processed cheese products, the kind in cans and squeeze containers. The rest of that can is emulsifiers, sodium phosphate, artificial coloring, stabilizers, and preservatives. The sodium-to-protein ratio is deeply unfavorable. Some canned cheese spreads deliver over 400 milligrams of sodium per 2 tablespoon serving, before you've applied it to anything. Eat a realistic portion, and you're approaching 600 to 800 milligrams of sodium for what amounts to a minimal protein contribution. The saturated fat load is substantial, and unlike the saturated fat in coconut milk, which comes with MCTs and lauric acid, the fat here arrives alongside artificial additives, with no compensating nutritional benefit. If you're stocking a pantry for real nutrition, this offers the caloric density of cheese without the redeeming nutritional profile of real cheese. Better alternative, vacuum-sealed blocks of hard cheese. They last weeks refrigerated, months when frozen, and they're actual food. Number 10. Sweetened condensed milk. Half a day's calories in a baking ingredient. It looks like an innocent baking staple. One of those pantry fixtures that seems harmless because it's associated with desserts rather than meals. But the sugar content tells a very different story than the packaging implies. A standard 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk contains approximately 44 grams of added sugar per serving. That's the equivalent of over 10 teaspoons of sugar in a single serving of what most people consider a background ingredient. Eat through the whole can in a recipe shared between 2 people, a realistic scenario for flan, key lime pie, or tres leches cake, and each person has consumed close to a day's worth of added sugar from one ingredient alone. The glycemic impact is among the fastest of any common pantry product. Sweetened condensed milk triggers blood sugar spikes comparable in speed to soft drinks, due to the combination of lactose and extensively added refined sugar in a highly concentrated liquid form. The calorie density reinforces the concern. A standard can contains approximately 980 to 1,000 calories total, nearly half a day's energy in one baking ingredient before a single other component is added to the recipe. Better alternative, unsweetened coconut condensed milk for dairy-free baking, or evaporated milk with a controlled addition of your preferred sweetener so you determine the sugar load. Number 9. Evaporated milk. The dense dairy disappointment. That innocent-looking can seems like a reasonable pantry dairy option, and in specific cooking applications, certain sauces, baked goods, savory dishes, it has legitimate uses. But as a general dairy substitute for long-term storage, it consistently underperforms on the practical metrics that matter most. The taste is the first issue. Evaporated milk undergoes extended heat treatment that caramelizes the sugars and produces a distinctly cooked, faintly sweet flavor. It's a far cry from fresh milk, and that difference shows in beverages and anything where dairy is a background note rather than a sauce base. The lactose content is high and concentrated. This makes it a poor choice for anyone with dairy sensitivity or lactose intolerance, who might tolerate smaller amounts of regular dairy, but struggle with the concentrated form. Most critically for pantry planning, once opened, you have 4 to 5 days of refrigerated life before it spoils. That's among the shortest post-opening windows of any canned product. By contrast, shelf-stable UHT carton milk, which tastes closer to fresh, contains the same nutrients in more diluted form, and comes in resealable packaging, is simply a better option for everyday pantry storage. Number 8. Canned shrimp. The protein that costs more than it delivers. Quick protein, no cooking, ready immediately. That's the promise. The nutritional reality is less compelling than the packaging suggests. Cholesterol is the first concern. A 100-gram serving of canned shrimp can contain 150 to 195 milligrams of cholesterol, approaching or exceeding the threshold that cardiovascular-conscious dieters are often counseled to monitor closely. Before you've added anything else to the plate, you've committed a significant cholesterol load. The canning process takes a toll on the B vitamins shrimp naturally contains. The water-soluble vitamins responsible for energy metabolism are partially degraded by the heat and water exposure involved. Safety concerns compound the picture. Shrimp is among the most common food allergens, with reactions that can range from mild to severe. Import sourcing raises additional questions about antibiotic residue levels in some farmed varieties, a legitimate ongoing concern in the food safety literature. And here's the angle that really closes the case. Canned shrimp consistently costs more per gram of usable protein than canned sardines, canned salmon, or even quality canned tuna. You're paying a premium for a product with more risk, lower omega-3 content, and inferior shelf nutrition. Canned salmon delivers more protein per dollar, higher omega-3 fatty acids, lower cholesterol. Number 7. Canned potatoes. The dent that changes everything. One dent. That's genuinely all it takes to change this from a pantry staple to a potential health risk. When cans are damaged, swollen, leaking from seams, or showing any structural compromise, the risk of Clostridium botulinum contamination enters the picture. This is the bacterium responsible for botulism, a severe and potentially fatal form of food poisoning. In low-acid foods like potatoes, this bacterium can produce toxin even without visible signs of spoilage. No smell, no discoloration, no taste difference. If the can is compromised, the only safe answer is disposal. Never open it to check. Beyond the safety concern, quality takes consistent hits even in undamaged cans. The pressure cooking used in canning strips away water-soluble vitamins. Vitamin C and several B vitamins are significantly reduced. Potatoes are peeled before packing in most brands, removing the fiber and nutrient concentration found in the skin. The texture leans soft to mushy, structurally useless for roasting, frying, or hash browns, which are the applications where potatoes are most enjoyable. Older can linings may still contain BPA traces, meaning extended shelf storage carries additional chemical migration concerns. Better storage alternative: freeze-dried potato slices or dehydrated hash brown mix. Better texture, longer shelf life, no BPA concern, and no botulism risk. Number 6. Sugary baked beans. Dessert disguised as dinner. That glossy sweet sauce is exactly where the trouble starts. What looks like a hearty protein side dish often carries sugar levels that belong in the dessert aisle. Some canned baked beans pack close to 20 grams of added sugar per serving, largely from molasses or refined sweeteners. Eat a realistic portion, 2 servings from a single can, and you've consumed 40 grams of added sugar. That exceeds the entire daily added sugar limit recommended by the American Heart Association for women and nearly reaches the limit for men. Sodium isn't far behind. Many brands deliver 20 to 30% of daily sodium intake per serving. Blood pressure accumulates those hits over time. Here's the label literacy moment I want you to take away from this. The gap between the worst and best canned baked bean products on sugar is enormous. Some brands contain just 4 to 5 grams of added sugar per serving. Others contain 20 grams. They sit on the same shelf. The only way to know is the label. That check takes 5 seconds. Better alternative: plain canned navy beans or black beans, a tablespoon of molasses, smoked paprika, and garlic powder. You get the flavor profile with complete control over the sugar load. Number 5. Pre-cooked canned pasta meals. Texture destroyed, nutrition stripped. Noodles turn soft the way bread does when it's left in soup too long, swollen, fragile, and barely holding their original shape. By the time that lid comes off, the pasta has already finished breaking itself down. You don't twirl it. You scoop it. Whatever structure it once had is gone. But the texture is actually the least important problem here. The glycemic index of heavily processed canned pasta is significantly elevated above freshly cooked pasta. Extended heat processing causes starch gelatinization, a structural change that makes the starch digest faster than it would in al dente pasta. That means a faster, higher blood sugar spike per gram of carbohydrate and a shorter satiety window. You'll be hungry again sooner than the calorie count would suggest. The sodium load reinforces the concern. Some canned pasta meals contain 800 to 1,100 milligrams of sodium per serving. At the practical level, many people eat the entire can, not the labeled portion, which pushes the actual sodium consumed even higher. Better alternative: shelf-stable dried pasta plus a can of tomatoes plus a can of beans. 3 ingredients, 12-minute preparation, dramatically better nutritional profile, and food that actually has texture. Number 4. Processed canned meats. The WHO carcinogen most pantries still stock. That salty, smoky smell when the can opens tells you exactly how this meat was preserved. You're smelling the result of curing chemistry and shelf-life engineering, salt, nitrates, and time doing the work of preservation. The World Health Organization classifies processed meat as a Group 1 carcinogen, the same classification as tobacco and asbestos. In terms of evidence strength, the concern centers on nitrates and nitrites, which inside the body can convert into nitraso compounds that interact with the bowel lining. Research indicates that eating approximately 50 grams of processed meat daily, roughly 1 small serving. Here's an angle that most coverage misses. Uncured versions of canned processed meats, marketed as a healthier alternative, typically use celery juice as their nitrate source. The issue? Celery juice is among the highest natural sources of nitrates available. The conversion process inside the body is chemically identical. The uncured label is a marketing distinction, not a meaningful nutritional one. The sodium and saturated fat profiles of these products are consistently aggressive. Better shelf-stable protein alternative: canned sardines, salmon, or plain canned chicken breast, all of which deliver protein without the carcinogen classification. Number 3. Canned fruits and heavy syrup. A can of dessert labeled as fruit. The sweetness draws people in, and that's exactly the problem. Many people buy canned fruit believing they're making a healthy pantry choice, and they might be, depending entirely on what you're buying. Here's the label literacy breakdown you can use in the aisle right now. Heavy syrup-packed fruit can contain 15 to 30 grams of added sugar per serving. Juice-packed fruit typically contains 10 to 15 grams, lower but still not negligible because fruit juice concentrate is a concentrated sugar source. Water-packed fruit contains 0 to 2 grams of added sugar per serving. 3 versions, same fruit, dramatically different sugar loads. They often sit within inches of each other on the shelf. Beyond sugar, the canning process reduces vitamin C and several B vitamins, the very nutrients that make fruit nutritionally valuable beyond its natural sweetness. Some older can linings still carry BPA concerns for long-term storage. And before I get to number 1, I want to give you a warning that specifically affects anyone who eats canned seafood regularly. Because the risk at number 1 isn't just about nutrition. It's a neurological concern. Number 2. Most canned soups. The sodium factory in a can. You picture something slow-cooked. Something that sat on a stove for 3 hours, developing layers of flavor from real ingredients. What actually lands in the bowl is speed-built liquid, assembled in a factory with salt doing most of the flavor engineering. And that sodium load is not subtle. Many canned soups contain 700 to 1,600 milligrams per serving. But here's the label literacy issue that compounds the problem. FDA labeling rules allow manufacturers to list nutritional information for half a can. So when you see 890 mg sodium per serving, that can may contain 1,780 milligrams in total, close to or exceeding the entire daily recommended sodium limit in what you thought was a light lunch. Cream-based varieties add saturated fat to the sodium burden, and the extras MSG stabilizers thickeners. Even the packaging raises legitimate questions, with BPA lining still present in some brands. Better alternative, low sodium or no salt added options from smaller brands like Pacific Foods, Amy's Organic, or Imagine Soups are meaningfully better. Or use canned tomatoes, canned beans, and broth you control, 3 ingredients that make a real soup without the sodium engineering. Number 1. High-mercury tuna. The seafood risk most shoppers don't realize they're taking. Not all canned tuna is the same. And this distinction matters more than almost anything else on this list, because mercury exposure isn't an abstract risk, it's a neurological one. Larger tuna species, albacore and certain yellowfin, live longer and eat more, which means they bioaccumulate mercury progressively over their lifespan. Every can of albacore brings that accumulated mercury onto your plate. Mercury is a neurotoxin that doesn't simply pass through the body. At elevated exposure levels, it can impair fine motor coordination, affect speech, disrupt sleep patterns. The stakes escalate significantly during pregnancy, where the developing nervous system of a fetus is especially sensitive to mercury exposure. That's why FDA guidelines become notably stricter for pregnant women around albacore specifically. Here's how to protect yourself at the shelf in 3 seconds. Look for the words skipjack or chunk light on the label. In most U.S. brands, chunk light tuna is skipjack, which averages approximately 0.13 parts per million of mercury. Solid white albacore averages approximately 0.35 parts per million, roughly 27 times higher. The FDA recommends pregnant women limit albacore to 1 serving per week with no equivalent restriction on skipjack. That label check is 3 seconds and it matters. Seafood protein from canned sources is valuable. Sardines, salmon, chunk light tuna are all strong choices. It's the specific choice of high mercury varieties, consumed frequently, where the risk quietly accumulates. So now you have the full picture. 22 cans. A clear line between the ones earning shelf space and the ones quietly working against you. But before you close this video, I want to give you one last practical tool. Because knowing which cans to avoid is only half of the equation. The other half is being able to make that call in the aisle in under 10 seconds every single time. Here's the 5-second label check. First, sodium per serving. If it's over 600 milligrams, that's a high sodium product. You want under 400 for everyday pantry items. Second, added sugars. Any number above 5 grams in something that isn't a dessert ingredient deserves a second look. Third, look for BPA-free on the can or carton, especially for products stored long-term or heated in the can. Fourth, ingredients list length. A can of chickpeas should say chickpeas, water, salt. A can of baked beans should have a short list you can read in 10 seconds. If it reads like a chemistry textbook, put it back. That's the whole framework. Not an hour of nutrition research in the aisle. 4 data points, 10 seconds, better decisions every time. If you found one of these cans on your own shelf, or if the tuna switch is something you're going to make this week, drop a like in the comments. I read them. And if this changed how you think about your pantry, subscribe, because the next video goes somewhere you might not expect. We've covered which cans survive your shopping trip. But some foods don't just survive a shopping trip. They survive outages, supply disruptions, years on a shelf without losing their nutritional value. The food's built not just for a busy week, but for genuine long-term storage when access to grocery stores. That's exactly what the next video covers. The staples engineered for true long-haul survival. You'll want to see what makes the list.